So hello everyone, and welcome to another conversation of the sixth cycle of conversations on corporeal architecture. My name is Maria da Piedade Ferreira, and today I am very glad and honored to introduce you to Renee Christensen. Renee D. Christensen, PhD, ADEC, WELL AP, WELL Faculty Director, Mind Concept Lead, Standard Development, IWBI. Dr. Renee Christensen brings almost a decade of expertise as an international leader in health and the built environment. At International Well Building Institute, she leads the development of the Mind concept and the first set of features for the residential market focusing on mental health. Prior to joining IWBI, Dr. Christensen served as Senior Research Fellow at National University of Singapore, School of Design and Environment, where she contributed to multiple research studies, including designing future-ready nursing homes. Renee, we are very glad to have you here with us today.
Thank you, Maria. So happy to be here too.
So, here we have, can you see the screen?
Yes, thank you. So hello, everybody. My name is Renee Christensen, and as Maria already stated, I'm a director on the standard development team and a subject matter expert at the intersection of mental health and the built environment. Next slide, please. And thank you for organizing the slides, Maria. We've had like a new program, malware installation, and so it's been causing some of our programs like PowerPoint to crash. So that's why I forwarded you the slides. So thank you for that. So at IWBI, we are focused on people, all people in all places, anyhow or anywhere they are. We believe that emotional and physical connection between people and the places where we work, live, play, watch, and learn is undeniable. So be it an office, a warehouse, a home, a factory, or a school, the power of place can be felt everywhere we go. That's why we're on a mission to transform health and well-being with our people-first approach to the spaces and places where we spend our lives. Next slide, please. At IWBI, we are the trusted authority on health and well-being for buildings, organizations, and communities. Our building standard is trusted because it's founded upon evidenced and verified through third-party organizations and undergo on-site performance testing. So that's what sets us apart from some of the other building standards that are out there, even when they do focus on health and well-being. It's more of like they check the box that, yes, they've done that, where we go above and beyond that with our performance testing and third-party reviewers of documentation. Next slide, please. So to begin with, I'd like to start with a definition of health. So the definition of health by the World Health Organization serves as a backbone when thinking about how we want to impact health at IWBI. Particularly in the United States, we often think of health as the absence of disease, but it's important to be thinking about health, including physical health, mental health, as well as social health, with prevention in mind. Next slide, please. We know today that our health is based on far more factors than just our genetics. Genetics are only responsible for about 10% of the state of our health, according to research by the World Health Organization. The majority of what determines our health is based on the physical and social environments in which we live and work in. That means that both the built environment as well as people's income level and living conditions, and also how we behave. So it's how active we are, whether we smoke, and what we eat each day. So as we talk about health and the design of our physical environment, we'll keep these definitions and these considerations regarding health-related behaviors in mind. Next slide, please. So building upon the concept that health is holistic, so it's made up of policies, operation, and design strategies that are focused on how you can put health at the center of your design strategy. It addresses human health through the building's design interventions that make the air cleaner to breathe or water healthier to drink, or operational protocols that ensure our buildings are working to protect and promote our mental health and well-being, including policies that embed a culture of health, such as like no smoking policies. Or policies to promote healthy eating by providing like non-meat options. So WELL promotes designers and building operation professionals as agents of public health. So our approach to the environmental design is aligned with the salutogenic approach, which leverages on the work in the late 1970s by Aaron Antonovsky, a professor, researcher, and medical sociologist. In the 1990s, architect Alan Delany suggested that the salutogenic method be applied to architectural design of healthcare facilities to enhance treatment outcomes. And so through his own research based on Antonovsky's work, Delany proposed psychosocially supportive design as a framework for eradicating anxiety through the physical design of spaces. Next slide, please. WELL approaches health through 10 concepts which focus on policy, operations, and design. These 10 areas of focus in combination with one another lead us to healthier indoor spaces, healthier occupants, and thus happier and more productive people. Each of the concepts is led by a subject matter expert. And as Maria already provided that information, I am the mind concept lead. So a lot of my time at IWBI is looking into like different focus areas and emerging evidence for things like biophilic design or the use of color in design. And my laptop just crashed again. Okay, so
can you see the slide?
Yeah, can you tell me what slide number we're on?
I can't see the number, but it's the one that says the WELL standard is a library of evidence-based building.
Thank you. Sorry about that. And the WELL building standard provides a framework for creating environments, both physical and social, that drive health and well-being for all. So with over 500 strategies that are grounded in evidence from over 7,000 peer-reviewed studies, and it's also tested in the market by over 20,000 industry leaders, WELL provides an integrated set of solutions that can be trusted. Next slide, please. So how do we create a building standard that is evidence-based and verifiable? Next slide, please. So WELL incorporates measurable health outcomes. We leverage a lot on public health research and to inform our verifiable strategies. So we advance the idea that the way buildings are designed, constructed, and operated are powerful opportunities to positively impact human health and well-being. So we focus on the social, human, and building impacts on human health. And our standard is grounded in an ever-growing body of research, again, from industry experts, applied research, public health, and experimental research. You can't measure what you don't track. So WELL certification is performance-based certification, meaning that performance testing occurs after occupancy. So air and water quality, acoustics, lighting, aspects of thermal comfort, and any other environmental factors are measured on-site post-occupancy. So we have a large field of performance testing agents that go out to the projects and again, measure air quality, water quality, lighting, among other things. So we have here are some of the performance documentation and review information that's submitted through our third-party organization that looks at all of these verifications. So projects are required through the certification process to submit documentation showing that they have achieved the strategies that they say they have. So they might be required to submit like a policy document, or maybe photographs that say, adjustable height desks are present. So this is an extensive list of some of the policy and design documents that are required, in addition to the performance testing agent reports that are submitted post-occupancy. Next slide, please. So we do have a vast international group of transdisciplinary experts who work to support the advancement of health and well-being in the built environment. So these experts have provided support for this expansion of the WELL building standard around the world. So in addition to WELL faculty, who are mostly members of universities, who teach health and well-being in the built environment, in addition to our WELL APs. And these WELL APs are certified similar to maybe like some of the green building certifications like LEED and BREEAM, Green Mark or Green Star. So they require a test and a certification. We also have our concept advisories, who are our international group of experts that provide insight and feedback on some of the topics that we look into, and we'll talk about one of those towards the end of this presentation. So we also have project teams, and oftentimes the WELL APs are consultants to projects. So they might be members of like large design firms. We're seeing a lot more design firms require their employees to become WELL APs, but also there are design consulting organizations that go in and help organizations become WELL certified, similar to some of their green certifications. Next slide, please. So here's some stats on our uptake of the WELL certification project. So our initial standard was released in 2018. So we've made quite good progress through global adoption in this short period of time. Next slide, please. So here, the next two slides are examples of projects which incorporated our design strategy. So this is one, and I mostly used examples that were good examples of elements in the MIND concept. So here's a project which did a really good job with their biophilic design. Next one, please. So we also have some strategies that focus on restorative spaces and restorative policies. And this is an example of a project that incorporated restorative spaces in their project in Japan. So although our strategies are somewhat prescriptive because they require these third-party verification, and so a third-party reviewer would have to come in and be able to identify the strategies, but they are very adaptable. So you can see here in this project in Tokyo how they interpreted a restorative space, which might look very different from one that's maybe in Egypt. Next slide, please. So continue to meet the growing need to develop people for first places. We're continually looking for gaps in our standard and in the design field also. So we held a design charrette in New York City with leaders from the top international design firm firms at the beginning of 2023 to identify emerging topics. And the outcome of the design charrette included several topics and focus areas that gave us some insight on topics and strategies that we might look at in the future. Next slide, please. So designing for neurodiversity became a primary area of focus for IWBI because it also aligned with our focus and drive towards diversity, equity, and inclusion. Next slide, please. So our leadership tasked us with developing design strategies which focus on the needs of the neurodiverse population. Next slide, please. So we found that others shared our interest, and we gathered many design guidelines provided from international leaders. So while these design guidelines were helpful in identifying concepts, they fell short with prescriptive requirements that designers could implement. And this is often a challenge for designers. Designers sometimes can grasp or receive high-level concepts like we talk a lot about ambiance and lighting and the use of color, and sometimes it's the concepts are somewhat abstract and ambiguous. And so designers and architects often struggle to translate those concepts into design strategies. So that has been our challenge here at IWBI to really translate those kind of ambiguous or abstract concepts into design strategies. Oh, I don't think that slide downloaded correctly. Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah, it's just taking a minute. So this is an example of design strategies for these different thresholds. And while the one on the left is a good example of a design strategy for a hypersensitive person, and the one on the right for a hyposensitive person, this doesn't really help designers understand how to incorporate these design features within a larger space. So these two examples are very segregated. And so it doesn't really help designers understand how they can incorporate them into their designs. So this is often what designers will have access to, but again, it kind of falls short. You can see some of the strategies down below, like prefer less sensory stimuli. Well, what exactly does that mean, and how do you translate that into your actual design? And so that's kind of what we struggle with in developing our design strategies. Next slide, please. So as the Mind Concept Lead, I spend a majority of my time reviewing public health data and doing literature reviews across a variety of disciplines such as medicine, the environmental sciences, and multiple branches in the social sciences. I spend a lot of time in environmental psychology, evolutionary psychology, and also in design guidelines to establish connections between the built environment and human behavior. So neuroscience has emerged as a source of evidence to support environmental design. So organizations like the Academy of Neuroscience for Architecture has emerged as a source of education and training in this field. However, they're far from alone. So from broad concepts such as biophilia, place attachment, sense of belonging, or linking how identity is linked to the built environment. So I spend a lot of my time focusing on these components and trying to find resources to support them to create more design strategies for designers. Next slide, please. So, well, we can, as designers and architects, we can make a difference. But how we do make the built environment welcoming to all and help our industry take a more holistic approach. Next slide, please. So if we're able to watch this short video, I think it's a very good one in an explanation of how we do our work at IWBI.
It's running. It's just loading.
It's now time for wellness to come to the fore, because as an industry, we are well versed on sustainability in its broader incarnation. This is the next level.
The spaces that we live and work in every day have a significant impact on us as human beings.
If we don't consider the human health and wellness of people that will occupy the spaces we create, we're not getting it right. A well building is one that is designed and constructed and maintained to improve the health, happiness, wellness, and productivity of its users.
We are considering their well-being as a core value to our organization. Everybody wants good quality air. Everybody wants high quality water. One of the interesting things about the WELL standard is that for the first time, we're really quantifying things like the role of nourishment and mind.
What this is really doing is dealing with chronic issues that are affecting our workplace. Designers can actually create spaces that incorporate solutions that affect the human body.
就是在所有的建筑当中，大家都说有很多成熟的标准，但是这是第一步，是国际性的、全球可以适用的关于建筑和人的关系的，特别是人的健康的关系的这么一个标准。
What I love about the WELL standard is the fact that it is based in scientific research. We're not reinventing the wheel. We're looking at how do we take that data that already exists out in the public to create our buildings.
It's a third-party, evidence-based, science-backed rating system that tells you how your space is performing. To have someone come on site and physically test our space was pretty incredible, so that we could get live feedback from all of the systems that we had designed.
Employee satisfaction is absolutely crucial, and it's a clear predictor of business performance. We get fantastic feedback from our employees working in this space.
They're saying things like, I'm sleeping better. They start talking about how they love coming into the office every day. Human cost is one of the highest costs, up to 90% of operating a business. So retaining and attracting the best people is really important.
And I think when employees see that this is something that's a priority to the company, I think they recognize it's a company that they want to work for.
The WELL building standard is an easy choice. $1.10 per square foot for our project, less than $1 a day per employee. The return on the investment is priceless. It really can't be measured.
If you want to keep your people productive and passionate, make sure the workspace is a healthy, vibrant environment.
In the same way with the green building movement, once we knew how to make buildings better for the planet, we had to do it. It was a moral imperative. Now we know how to make buildings better for people. You have to do it.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah, let's just stop sharing the screen so we can see you. So thank you very much, Renee, for this really interesting and comprehensive presentation. We actually have a group here in the classroom of many students from the US, and I know that they had already heard about WELL, so maybe they also have already some questions already in mind, but I'm already like triggering them a little bit. And also for our remaining students, I think that for most of them this was a new topic. So I'm also very, very glad that you could share with us all of this overview about WELL. And I'm also very glad that you invited me about a year ago to be in the team of the advisors, because whenever we have these meetings, I always feel that it's a really incredible opportunity to share insights and also to learn from each other. And as you mentioned, specifically with the topic of neurodiversity, that it's so complex, and we have a few hints of the things that we have to be sensitive about, but there's also still a lot of work to be done to really get into the complexity. And what I also find so interesting about the work of WELL is not just to get these broad overview concepts, but really putting them into the reality of design solutions. So my first question for you would be, from your experience, what has been the biggest challenge of the implementation of these design strategies?
To be clear, the way that projects around the world use the design strategies and implement them, is that what you mean?
Yes.
Okay. Often I think probably one of the most common feedback that we receive is that we are somewhat US centric. That is really the goal of establishing these international advisories, so they can take a look at these strategies and also implementing them around the world. We started, we're still a startup organization, so we've only been around for like not even 10 years, and so we are just starting to make progress in some other countries. Recently, we've had a lot of growth in India, and so as different countries start using our design or our building standard, they give us feedback, and then we become more aware of maybe gaps in our research, or maybe things that we need to, like cultural considerations that we need to take into account. So we're often, we have a team in China that provides us some insight. We also have a team in Australia, but mostly we are dependent upon project feedback to help us align with different ways of doing, different ways of being around the country. So again, so it's the project feedback that we're really dependent upon, and we make changes to the language to try to be more inclusive to other cultures and be more sensitive to their practices around the world.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. This actually makes a connection with my next question that I was also thinking, because I'm also teaching now, the class actually I'm teaching currently for Brazil is on active design. And I noticed that in this kind of topic, we really have to be very sensitive about being inclusive, because every body is literally different. And so when we talk about wellness strategies, for example, with the context of active design, designing staircases to encourage people to use the stairs and not the elevator and so on, there's a lot of sensitive issues that we have to deal with here. And I'm sure that you working with WELL also deal with them. So could you also perhaps talk a little bit about these challenges? Because you also mentioned that WELL has this kind of microcosmic perspective of trying to include parameters such as nutrition, exercise, and all these things, and how these are all components of design. So what have been also the challenges in this regard?
Right. So I think some of the challenges have been around diversity, equity, and inclusion. A lot of our design strategies were when we first developed them, back in like 2016, 17, we just started off with, just the fundamental ones. But now, as we're growing over time, we're able to go back and look at some of the language we used and really have a very critical eye about some of the language, like words that we use, like access. What does access mean? Who gets access? Who, so we've gone back and continually look at our standard and identify that language that might indicate a red flag that we might need to be more inclusive in our language and in our design strategies. A couple years ago, we were tasked with, the standard development team was tasked at developing an equity rating. So we looked at throughout all of our features, there's more than 150 features, and really went through word by word, line by line of each of those features to identify any areas that might be that might have language that isn't inclusive. And then we also went through and we go through these like tagging exercises where we look at all the features, and we brought together the ones that specifically address diversity, equity, and inclusion, and developed a well equity rating. So we have the regular certification, but we also have other ratings. We had the health safety rating in response to COVID. We have the well equity rating, not just in response to the Black Lives Matter movement, but other movements that also address those marginalized groups or underrepresented groups. So we're always looking at ways that we can, build a standard that really addresses everybody's needs. So whether it's, looking at movement, staircases might not be the movement for everybody. When I did my my research in Singapore and in nursing homes, we looked at ways to improve the movement of elderly people. It wasn't really always feasible to promote, a staircase. And so we had to really look at other ways in which everybody can be encouraged to move throughout their day. So it's been very challenging, and we continually receive a lot of criticism, and we welcome it because it really helps shed light on those areas where we might not have looked at. Again, we're just like, 8 professionals developing the standard, and fortunately, we do have an advisory to lean on and help us identify some of those areas. But we know we have a lot of room for improvement and places to grow.
Thank you. I'm very glad that we can also talk so openly about these issues, because I know also from your background, from your also your basic studies and so on, that you already come from this field of the social sciences, right? That these issues of inclusion and equity are something that are already in your core values also as a professional, which I find is specifically important for someone who works with creating these standards exactly with the goal of improving people's lives. And that would be exactly, it's my next question for you. What was the spark for you to get interested in working in the design field? So trying to bring these things together into creating this kind of very hands-on approaches to how we can improve people's lives through design.
Yeah, great question. So the first part of my career, I worked in mental health, so through private and public mental health organizations. So I worked for our Department of Mental Health. So that was like the government organization that was in charge of providing mental health services to the country. It became privatized, and and through that, it went through a lot of transitions. So like back in the early 20th centuries, we built like big asylums, huge buildings to where people with mental health challenges, mental illnesses could go and receive inpatient treatment. And over the course of the early 20th century, some movements evolved starting, I think they actually started in the Netherlands, normalization, and then that evolved into deinstitutionalization. So people with mental health illnesses were being transferred from these big institutions to smaller institutions. And so that's where I spent a majority of my early career, working with these people in institutions. And as I was working with them, you know, for probably more than a decade, big institutions, small institutions, people out in the community, but always kind of like in living within an institution, whether it was you know, like the built environment or just the policies and practices that were embedded in the environment. And as I was working in those for, again, about like 10 years, I began to notice the impact of the environment on the individual's like mental illness. And what I started like observing was that people that were living in these large institutions with very institutionalized practices, you know, they would like have to line up for everything, line up to receive their medication, line up to receive their meals, and it was very kind of like prison-like. And they began adopting very institutionalized behaviors, and the behaviors that they began adopting in response to their environment actually made them look more mentally ill than they really were. So because of their adaptation to their environment, they began expressing behaviors that made them look sicker than they actually were. But there were other environments in which I worked with people that were more like home-like. And those people actually express behaviors that we would consider a lot more kind of normal. And so they looked actually like less sick. And I thought like, wow, this is very interesting. And I can obviously see the impact of the built environment on their mental health prognosis. So I found a program in the US called Environment and Behavior, developed by some early researchers like in the early 21st century, David Cantor and some other people like that. And it's called Environment and Behavior. And it really studies this interaction between people's environment and human behavior. So I began studying that, and it was actually a really neat program that brought together the social sciences and architects, and really brought us together and forced us to have these conversations about the impact of the built environment and human behavior. I find that a lot of times, especially I was really challenged in Singapore because they have like a very engineering focus. And I think that's kind of why they brought me over there, was again to bring in that human aspect into environmental design, because again, they were very engineer focused, and they didn't really understand how to incorporate, human-centered data into their designs. So yeah, that's kind of how I got started and what kind of sparked my interest in this interaction. I finished my PhD in 2015 and did a few things, taught like public health for a couple years right after that, before going to Singapore. And I really had intended to maybe like focus on policy, maybe at, the government level. But I really wanted the most impact that I could get out of my interest. And at IWBI, I saw them as growing. The trajectory of the uptake of their building standard was growing exponentially year upon year internationally. And I really thought that would be the greatest impact that I could have on my knowledge.
This is really a wonderful insight to see how from this direct experience, and also from seeing in this really tangible way, how the way we build and also the way that we manage space can directly shape our lives, and even after maybe mid to long term, even completely shape our behavior. And specifically the way you mentioned that the people you noticed who were going through these very regimented protocols of using the space were actually looking and maybe acting sicker than they were. So we really see how important it is to pay attention to these things, and also to think about strategies to change them. So I find it, of course, incredibly valuable. And now I would go a little bit back, now thinking about when you talked in your presentation about post-occupancy studies. So could you perhaps tell us a little bit about what are the concrete measures that you use in these post-occupancy studies, for example, to measure the positive impact in terms of health?
So we do have quite an extensive, and I lead our pre-approved survey program. So I, in addition to my other work with the standard development, we also lead other projects. And the other project that I lead is on post-occupancy evaluations. So we have about 32 post-occupancy evaluations that we have pre-approved. So they're questionnaires through organizations. Some of them are academic institutions who have developed very robust post-occupancy evaluations. So they will administer these to our projects. Projects have a requirement that they do a post-occupancy evaluation after occupation of the space. So about 6 months after the space is occupied, an organization, a third party will come in and do a post-occupancy evaluation. And some of the questionnaires are very, very extensive and very comprehensive. So they'll use some psychometrically validated questions, especially when it comes to asking people about their mental health and well-being. So they'll ask them questions about like their satisfaction with the lighting or satisfaction with the air quality, but also the impact on their health and well-being. And we recently published a study in Buildings and Environment early this year. I think it was in August, that showed there was about a 15% increase in productivity and a 15% increase in mental health in buildings that were well certified. It was a case study of, I think, about like 6 projects. So we do, and also you heard on that video that interest in return on an investment. You know, projects want to know that our strategies are actually impacting. So when we say our standard is evidence-based, it is rooted in multiple third parties or other third-party studies. So we don't actually do the research ourselves, although we do have our parent organization, Delos, that has a well-living lab that's connected with the Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota. And we also have a living lab in China. So we do some research, but mostly what we'll do with these post-occupancy evaluations is study the impact of our design strategies on the occupants through these post-occupancy evaluations.
Thank you. And now here in the classroom, I would like to leave the next 15 minutes to listen to your questions. Who would have? Yeah. You have a question? No. Oh, you're just moving in your chair. Okay. Yes. Please come over because we can see you better in the aisle. we're still warming up. This is our second session, and our students are still a little shy to come here. We have a meeting owl that makes this kind of different views and panorama, so they have to move a little to come closer to the owl.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sounds cute. I just had a question about, is there any consideration about how the building actually looks and not just like materials or air quality and lighting?
Oh, so like aesthetics?
Yeah, I would say, yeah, I guess the exterior and interior of what the building looks like.
I don't really think we do. We don't have anything about like the building facade. We might like, I have seen projects incorporate like biophilic elements in the facade, like green exterior walls are very popular in Singapore. So we see a lot there, but we don't really talk too much about aesthetics. And I actually wanted to talk a lot more about aesthetics. Actually, at the beginning of the 2023 advisory, I opened up the conversation. What is beauty? Let's talk about beauty. What is it? Can we define it? Can we prescribe it? And so I continue to have those conversations. I have a couple of colleagues down at University of Pennsylvania, Anjan Chatterjee. He's done a lot of work in neuroaesthetics. So I would like to incorporate a lot more about beauty and design. Actually, in our first version of the building standard, we did have a strategy or a concept, a feature called beauty and design. But because there wasn't enough research to support it, it kind of got dropped. And I think that's kind of one of the challenges and one of the frustrations that I experience is that sometimes there's just not enough research to support it. And so that's why, I was looking at the Academy of Neuroscience for Architecture and neuroaesthetics and neuroscience to kind of with some hope that they might help, reveal some insight on what is beauty, what's, in design, inside and out. And so that I could use that to develop strategies. Mm-hmm. But right now there's kind of like not a lot of good evidence to support it.
Mm-hmm. That's a very good question. Thank you. Any other questions here in the classroom? Yes, please. Oh, there's two more. Great. Well, this issue of beauty, it's always a long discussion, isn't it, Renee? Because some people are very defensive about how can you measure it and make beauty something scientific, but actually we can learn a lot from science about beauty.
We've actually come a long way, yes.
Can you maybe sit because then the owl can see you better?
Can you please talk more about your project in Cyprus with the refugees, please?
Sure. So I live in New York City, and I've been there for about 2 years, and I was just kind of really like struggling to find a lot of meaning and be part of like some volunteers, some kind of like giving back. And so I was kind of like looking around, and a colleague of mine posted something on LinkedIn, and I just responded to it. I was like, wow, that's really beautiful. And then the founders of the NGO Office for the New Work reached out to me, and we started having Zoom calls, and they were telling me that they have been working on building playgrounds in refugee camps. They had completed a couple in Greece, and we're working on this one here in Cyprus. And I'd love to show you some photos, but I don't have any like downloaded on my laptop. But if you go to the Office for the New Earth, ONE or one, you'll see some of their work. And so I was really excited about coming here and working with them. I'm working still remotely with my regular job. So I work on the project in the mornings and then come here from like 2 o'clock in the afternoon to about midnight and do my regular work. But it's really been fulfilling. They have wonderful designs and they're really incorporating a lot of elements in the building standard, but they're also really their designs are really evidence-based, and they really bring together the mind and the body in the different activities in the playground. And so it really requires the children to be very aware of this interaction of their mind and the body and healing in the from their trauma of being displaced from where they are. So it's been very rewarding, and I encourage you guys to go to their website and look at their designs. They're very beautiful, and they really incorporate neuroscience into their design. So I will continue to work with them, and we're working on a paper to really highlight the neuroscience behind their design.
Thank you. Very good question. Please. Have a little traffic here in the classroom.
Hello. So it's actually kind of fun because I also wanted to know about the playgrounds, but I have a follow-up question for that. Because I worked in refugee volunteering, so I volunteered for a year after my graduation from school. And the problem is in Germany, we have a social system that is like, it takes a year, the integration takes a year or longer. So the people that come here, they stay in refugee homes. So before they get a flat or can work, it takes a year that they stay in a refugee's home. And there are some that are really good, like the one I worked in was very good, but there are a lot of like camps, they call it camps, that are very bad because it's like container homes. And I just wanted to ask you, do you have any like advice, like small changes people can do to improve the living?
Right. So yes, there are a wide variety of refugee camps. So even when I say a refugee camp, you could think of, you know, the tents, you know, in the very kind of the primary kind of living environments. The one that that we've been working on here, and another project a little bit north of us, about an hour north in Nicosia. They're both container kind of camps. So they started off with the tents, and then they brought in the containers. However, Maria, a fellow ANFA and Moving Boundaries colleague of ours, Ludovica Gregori, she has done, and actually I invited her here, and she was here for a couple of days. I think she left on Saturday, but she actually is doing her PhD on temporary housing, and she used the well building standard to incorporate some strategies in improving these. Most of her work is in temporary housing for like victims of like natural disasters. Like in Italy, they had that big earthquake, was it in 2018? And then actually she left here on Saturday to go to Turkey to work with the university there to look at designing temporary housing for the victims of the Turkey-Syria earthquake. Was it earlier this year or late last year? Yeah, so I think this is a very good way to spend your time in thinking how to improve the environments of the most vulnerable in our society. And because I think that kind of work probably has the greatest impact, because those are the people who really need it the most. And there are obviously many ways that those environments can be improved. And again, she's focusing her efforts there, and has used the well building standard to incorporate some of the strategies into the design of the environments of refuge or temporary housing. But I think they could also be utilized in refugee camps also.
Thank you. Great question, and a wonderful synchronicity, Renee, because Ludovica made a talk for our conversations last winter. She showed all her wonderful PhD project, and she even got the Bauhaus, European Bauhaus Award for this project she's doing. So I will link, you will get it on the Moodle. I will link the conversation, and also when this one goes to YouTube, I will link it below so that people who watch the video can immediately go and watch Ludovica's conversation. She's doing really incredible, beautiful, meaningful work. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's kind of like the people that are really going to make the impacts are those kind of projects that really people have a passion for, people that like they really want to help society and especially the most vulnerable in our society be able to thrive. And those are the kinds of projects that I find very, very inspiring and worth spending my time on.
Yes. Any more questions here in the classroom? No? Okay. So I would have one final question, although we only have 3 official minutes. So it would also be related to this topic. And this is also in connection with a lot of the issues that we already had in this conversation, and I also thought about during your presentation, which has to do with these cultural aspects and how the cultural aspects, how we have to be sensitive to them, but also how we can deal with them in terms of design strategies. And in this case of for example, working with sensitive populations, we also have to deal with these cultural issues, because, for example, we had a lot of refugees coming here in Germany that come from Africa or from Syria, and they have very different ways than here we have in Europe to appropriate space. So is this also something that you have been doing more research on?
Right. So part of my interest is in identity, and how identity is attached to the spaces, that not only the spaces that we live in, but the things that we do in those spaces. So when I think about like different cultural practices, we need to ensure that the spaces that we design allow for a variety of cultural practices, even if we can't like establish exactly what they are. Refugee camps are very generic, but I don't think that they necessarily have to be. And they can also maybe become like flexible to adapt to whatever culture comes in, whatever kind of practices they need to engage in to reinforce their identity, because they shouldn't have to leave their identity back where they came from and be forced to like form another identity based on a container that they're now living in. Before, in my previous work, it was mostly focusing on elderly people and going into nursing home and allowing them to engage in practices which reinforces their identity. And I also think that is very relevant to these refugees that are coming in, that they need to be able to continue their practices, and their environment should be able to sustain those practices. So yeah, I had an interesting conversation with a colleague here at IWBI about you know, some of our requirements for like air quality that would prohibit practices like saging a room, which is a common practice when, you know, people are sick or and even in my concept, I have language in there that says, you know, a certified mental health professional. Those are very westernized kind of concepts, and they're not very inclusive to a wide variety of cultures that may, you know, have different practitioners in their community. That obviously, you know, we need to provide environments that that support a huge number of practices and cultures, and really embrace that diversity. And that's a really, really big challenge.
Okay, thank you. We have exactly now 7 sharp here. we will finish for now, because here in Germany it's already very dark at this time and our students have a full day. So I really want to respect their circadian rhythm as much as possible. We try, although we have a lot of bright artificial light here in the room. So thank you so much, Renee, for sharing your time and your experience and knowledge with us. This was very inspiring and also very satisfying to learn. And I hope that we have again a chance of meeting and sharing ideas.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you, Maria, and thank you to all your students.
Okay, so thank you. Have a great evening. Bye-bye.